Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson, and I will be hosting this week alongside Scott and Joris once again. Guys, how are you doing this evening?
My name is not Ben Jackson, but hello, everyone.
My name also isn't Ben Jackson, and I'm not in a good mood. Well, no, today I actually am, but during the weekend, I guess I wasn't really.
I'm surprised you made it. To be fair, I thought I was waiting for I can't make it this week. It's just gonna drop out. I mean, you did initially when Scott and I joined to start the podcast. It was just a black screen, and we're like, maybe this is a form of protest that you just feel like you're going to be here but not actually turn up, a bit like Genk unfortunately did this weekend.
Was that a dark protest rather than a dirty protest, which is something altogether different?
Thankfully, we didn't have any of that.
The fun part is I could see everyone in the room. I was also there.
Yeah.
So that's your point of view.
Thankfully, you made it in. And we can see you and we can hear you, and you're not just snooping from the background. Let's quickly go through the results because we've actually got a fair amount of news to talk about. We are going to unleash Joris into a rant that's been building up. It may have simmered down a little bit by now. Maybe we needed to catch it at the weekend, but yeah, we can have an interesting conversation about the fallout from the Genk Union game. But I'll quickly go through the results. Raal and Antwerp drew 0-0 on Friday. What a lovely way to kick off the weekend. Also a little bit robbed because I think that was one of the games on DAZN with English commentary. Will wasn't commentating as far as I can remember, so you already feel a little bit robbed there. And then you don't see any goals. You're like, well, that's one of the 3 games done, and I haven't seen any goals. So that was a bit of disaster. Leuven, they lost 1-0 thanks to an own goal against Westerlo. Dender, they drew 2-2 with Charleroi. Charleroi's end of the season's been pretty poor. And that kind of just sums it all up. Union, they beat Genk 2-1. Big Chrissy Burgess celebrating 250 games for Union. He had an impact on this game, it's safe to say. Club Brugge, they drew 2-2 with Anderlecht. If you haven't seen Nathan de Cat's goal, go and check it out. Lovely, lovely finish from him. We're going to talk a little bit about Anderlecht because we haven't done it for a couple of weeks, so why not? It's about time they came back up. Ghent, they beat Mechelen 3-1 at home. Keeps that race for the top 6 nice and tasty, that result does. Zulte Waregem, same old for them. Lots of chances, lose 1-0. End for Sven van den Broek. We will talk a little bit about that and whether we think it was a good decision or not. St. Truden, they left it late to beat Cercle Bruges. Cercle's decent away form continued, but unfortunately, late on, they couldn't quite hang on to the point. But it was a lovely, lovely goal. The winner, Ito's pass to Matsuzawa, was just fantastic. And I feel like Matsuzawa off the bench has been a little bit of an impact player that probably goes under the radar. He looks like he's a decent pickup, and be interested to see if he gets some more game time next season because he does look like a good player. First of all, I think, guys, we probably should talk about Zulte Waregem and the Sven van den Broek sacking. I was pretty surprised. I watched them play recently against Anderlecht, and I thought they create chances. They play some really good football. He lost a key player in January with Nadi, and I don't think Dirk Saleh is quite at that level that Nadi was at but when he left. So I think that has been a problem for them in the central areas. Their problem mainly, though, has been taking their chances. Like, Vossen's obviously not really getting a look in at the moment. Ehrenberg, I can't remember the last time he scored. Ementa, like, he's physical and he's good at certain things, but putting the ball in the net, ironically, for a striker doesn't appear to be his strong suit. Like, he misses a fair amount of chances. Opoku as well, like, he's been quite good at creating chances for others, but not necessarily taking them either. So I just feel like that's been their major, major problem in recent weeks. But I don't know but what you guys think, but for me, it's just been a case of, well, that as long as they're playing well and they're creating chances, you can fix that in the summer. And the reason I say you can fix it in the summer is because you're not going to get relegated because the gap between you and Dender is so large anyway. So the peril isn't really there for them as like you'd expect if you're sacking a manager at this point in the season. You'd expect there to be some sort of jeopardy and peril, and like the jeopardy is falling into the bottom 4. And yes, obviously, like things could go horrendously wrong when you get into there, but I kind of doubt it would have done because the way they were playing and stuff like that, I think they'd have had more than enough to win a couple of games in there and get out of it. So I'm of the opinion that this could. Obviously, it can go one of two ways, and this is quite a stupid thing to say, but it could really backfire in these next two games. They could just be like baffled, and the players are just a bit like kind of not happy with the decisions being made, and then they definitely slip into the bottom four, and it's all been a complete waste of time changing the manager. So, yeah, I feel like it was a little bit of a weird one in that sense. I mean, we talked about the Dender one, and that was weird, but it's like a last throw of the dice, whereas this has seemed a little bit unnecessary. I feel like January they could have in the summer, they could have rectified some of the issues that they were having with kind of chance creation and finishing their chances, because they've been a really fun team to watch, and he did a great job getting them up last year. They should have scored against Anderlecht when they had like 1 billion shots on target. They'd now really lose to Standard Liège. I wonder whether if they had one that would have actually been safe. I always feel those ones are a bit weird. It's kind of like if you've made that decision that you think he's going to go, like surely the results are irrelevant at this point. So yeah, an interesting one, a surprising one. I mean, form-wise, it does make sense. Like in this day and age, this is kind of, if you're on that sort of run of form, you're going to get sacked. But when you actually watch the performances and consider the league situation and everything like that, I just feel like it's a little bit strange. Joris.
Yeah, before I hand the mic over to Scott, as usual, he takes the first word. But a small detail I want to maybe rectify a little bit from when, like, Ehrenberg's last goal was last week against Belgium, and I think he has scored a few last week. So he actually has, I mean, he has disappeared sometime, I guess, across the season, but the last few weeks he has picked up the form in goal scoring a little bit, even though, of course, they are, as a team, as a side, really still lacking in that. But he personally has scored a few across the last few weeks still. So that's what I want to pick out first. And then I'll over to Scott, and of course, I will give my 2 cents afterwards again.
I'll tip my hat to Mr. Ehrenberg and apologise for questioning him. I think it's because I watched that Anderlecht game and he had like 1 million chances in it and didn't score any of them. And I was like, But yeah, with 9 goals a season, I doubt he's going to be there at the end of the summer anyway.
Well, this is quite an interesting one because, and I kid you not, everybody, listeners, it was probably less than an hour after I dropped into our group chat. Vandenbroek's in trouble here. They really need to win one of their last 2 games. Less than an hour after I said that, he was gone. So clearly there were already wheels in motion, and Sven's phone was ringing as soon as I was typing that message to tell him he was already gone. So although we don't have a crystal ball, in some respects we kind of do at the same time. So I found that pretty amusing on a personal level this week. But yeah, I mean, you look at the numbers, it's not difficult to kind of see why they've made this decision. I agree with Ben. They're not in serious danger of going down. I think I'd be kind of surprised if they did slip into to playoff 3 at the last moment. I think they're going to get a point out of somewhere that will see them all right. Only 2 wins, I think, in their last 16. That kind of tells its own story. 4 straight defeats. They generally are on a downward trend. They are still creating a good amount of opportunities, as Ben was saying, but it's that thing that's plaguing quite a few sides, not just Zulte, to be fair. Basic inefficiency in converting chance into points has kind of caught up with them, and I think when you get to the stage where they're on the precipice of potentially dropping into that relegation playoff, then it's quite an easy decision for the board to make. In a way, obviously there's going to be changes there over the summer. They're going to bring somebody else in, I think. Even if Colpert does quite well, I would expect somebody else to come in, to be honest. For me, they've played reasonably well during the season, but on the whole, they probably have underachieved. That's my feeling about it, and obviously the board feels that way as well. On the whole, where they should actually be, you could have an argument about all day long, but I do think they've underachieved based on the way they've played and the opportunities they've created. They certainly should be doing a little bit better. And I think that's the basis the decision has been made on. I think Van den Broek is a slightly divisive coach, if I'm honest. The whole situation around Jelle Vossen is a really interesting one. I think Van den Broek's reasoning for not really giving Jelle a shout this season is sounding fair enough. They felt well, Sven did anyway, that they needed more of a physical striker, which, if you know your Belgian football, tends to be a road that most T1s go down. Most sides have a reasonably physical striker for obvious reasons. I'm going to be really interested now to see whether Gilloise now gets a little run on the side over the next few weeks, because the issue has been converting the chances, and they have somebody sitting there who is a proven goal scorer at this level, and can do it. So it's slightly baffling in a way to me that Sven didn't pivot a little bit and go, look, this has been our issue, because it hasn't really happened for them. There's been enough evidence to suggest that they perhaps should have given Yella a run out. Perhaps it's that pride thing. You've made a decision and you don't want to roll back in it. I think smart coaches are pragmatic enough to twist a little bit sometimes and admit when they've got it wrong. And I'm not sure Van den Broek's that sort of a coach. He has his approach, and he's not really going to change it. So I'm not that surprised. Yeah. I think it's probably the right call, if I'm honest, as well. Worth remembering as well that Zulte have got the youngest CEO in the Pro League. The owner's son as well, still learning the trade to some extent, but I'm sure they've sat down and looked at the data, and it doesn't take very long to tell you that the data's not really in their favour on the whole, and you have to pay attention to that. And at some point, ultimately, I don't know what you feel about this, Joris, at some point you do ultimately have to address that. And it's not a like-for-like situation, but when Club pivoted a few weeks ago, it was a similar situation in that they just felt inside the camp that, what fire there was had gone out. And this is kind of the same, I think. Yeah, you sometimes just have to pivot. And I think this is a situation where I think they've done the right thing.
One of the few people that think so, I guess. I'm sure one man, as you both already hinted at, is quite happy at Zulte Waregem now in Gilloise. He might have celebrated a little bit yesterday, a little cynical there, but yesterday when it happened, I'm sure he was not too disappointed about the news. Also, indeed, given the situation they are in, they're not going to go down anyway, regardless of if they fall down in those playoffs, relegation playoffs or not. Maybe they just want to test the waters with Colpart, I guess, and see. Because Scott mentioned in this whole discourse, he mentioned that he thinks that they will go for a different manager. I also still feel like if Colpart now wins 3 games in a row or something, they're just planning the contract because, well, that's the way football works as well. Same logic maybe as well, that they might have followed now. To sack Van den Broek, I don't think there's that much to add to what Scott said. Actually, he is a bit of a stubborn man, not the easiest man to work with, I believe, who stands behind his principles, I suppose. But that also at some costs, and not there to make friends as well. I do think that might have cost him as well a little bit. It's in a way admirable, I guess, but it does tend to get you sacked faster, I guess. Of course, 4 losses in a row. In 4 games, they arguably could have won, and at least during parts of all of those games, they were the better side, and should have scored. That's definitely also something. That there's something to say, like he can't kick the ball in the nets himself, of course, and that then it's the players' responsibilities. He did his plans kind of worked against those sides, but if they don't score, then then these situations happen. Well, both in the games they do lose them in the end. Also, often they lost them in the last few minutes as well. In the last 10 minutes, I think they conceded 3 out of the 4 times, or maybe all 4 times. But against Anderlecht, the difference was already made by then. That's really something they were struggling with, and not getting any points out of those games, and indeed slowly falling down in the classification as well. It doesn't help the case, and eventually that's just a footballing rule, I guess, that then the manager will be sacked, just maybe to have a shock effect or anything, as much or as little as it's actually matters that there would be the shock effect or not this season. That's yet another topic. But yeah, and I was hoping we would see less of those things. Actually, I was completely wrong, I guess, because I think we by now have like one of the most. Of the seasons with most of the managers sacked in even in Belgian football history. I didn't count it, but I'm sure there's plenty sacked or at least changed positions, because that also has happened a few times this season. But I was especially hoping at the bottom that it would be less the case, because there's only one team going, maybe even only going down. And especially given the situation that it's quite obvious which team that would be or will be throughout most of the season already. I was hoping that at the bottom the managers indeed would get some more respite and really get the chance to stick around a bit longer, and especially the boards to not panic too much. Looks like they are, or are they being smartly looking at next season already, thinking what is happening? But yeah, in checking the waters, testing the waters, like I said, questionable that is the case, but it is still a hypothetical possibility, I guess. But I would not bet on that. I think it's more panic, and unfortunately, it still happened again. And it will be interesting to see where Van den Broek will end up. Actually, given all of everything, indeed. Because I think Scott or maybe it was Ben as well, mentioned, they've been playing reasonably well this season. And but it didn't bring them far enough. According to the board, at least they kind of brought them far enough in the beginning of the season, but they have fallen off a cliff with those 2 wins against in 16 games, which was very narrow, and I'm not sure if it was a deserved one, even win against Dender. And one very much deserved win against Genk as well, but the Genk that was struggling still at the time as well. So that of course tells a story as well. That's half a league that you barely managed to win, and I guess that cost him his job. But it will be interesting to see where he will end up I'm assuming in Belgian football, or if it takes him somewhere else. But that's, of course, something we will have to wait and see, as I say so often in this podcast.
Yeah, be interesting to see where he does end up. And you're right. I think I was having a quick look through the table. I think it's only, was it 1, 2, 3 4 teams that haven't changed their manager this season. Some sacked, some obviously have left and then were replaced. I think it's Raal, Cercle, which is mad because there's 2 teams in the bottom 4 there that haven't changed their manager. So
maybe partially my what I was hoping for is still partially coming true.
It's kind of, but one of those situations is quite unique in Raal. I always felt that they probably wouldn't, and then Cercle has just been. They just made a decision based on what happened to them last year that they're not going to do it. I'd be shocked if they did it now. And Mechelen as well, obviously the other team. And I don't think we'd have had Mechelen on our. If someone had said this is the amount of managers that are going to get chopped and changed this season, Mechelen would have probably been in all of our lists. So yeah, that was probably one of the bigger surprises. It's probably not a surprise, this next piece of news that we're going to talk about with Anderlecht, because it's like Joris, you just mentioned it about. Obviously, if Thingy wins 4 games in a row, he'll probably get the Zulte Waregem job. And it's just that's what's going to happen in Anderlecht, isn't it? You go unbeaten over a couple of games, you're going to get the job. So it looks like Taravel is going to be the man until the end of the season. Schroeder, there's so much hoo-ha about this club didn't want to let him go, couldn't afford him, blah blah blah. Now he's joining the Germany setup, just out of nowhere. Okay, what's going on over there then? Which, interesting that he'd take that move, but he's kind of, I don't know, he's a weird guy. I just have this feeling that he's slightly odd. He just makes weird decisions, and I don't know. Yeah,
a Dutchman in Germany, at least, especially in football, that seems a bit, it's a bold move.
Yeah. I mean, it is quite funny, isn't it? Like, I just feel like Anderlecht and Ajax at the moment are kind of like mirror images of each other, of just these like heavily frustrated clubs making weird managerial decisions. Like our good friend Oscar Garcia is now head coach of Ajax until the end of the season. Like, how the hell did that happen? But I saw this news, like Scott, you put it into our chat, and then went and read kind of the paper chat about it as well, and I was just like, it just feels very Ghent last season, to the point where I'd even forgotten who Ghent gave that job to, and it was Daniel Milicevic, who won 4 games, drew 4 games, and then they just got absolutely horridly battered in the playoffs. They were so bad. And I feel like they've just made this is like such a vibes decision, isn't it? Like, this is like he's just bringing good vibes, and they are playing like more exciting football. I guess they're scoring more goals. The vibes are good because there's no pressure. But the vibes were good when you had David Huber, and that didn't go very well by the end of it. Like, stop making the decision based on vibes. Like, what does he have to do? Because the bar for Hazy we had last year, wasn't it? Was kind of like, he's got to win the cup final to get the job outright, but that wasn't the case. So for Jeremy, is it going to be the same thing? Like, does he need to win the cup final? Does he have to get a guaranteed European ticket, or is it just he'll just get the job? Do you know what I mean? Because it's just so bizarre. It's so bizarre. Like, he's now got to go abroad to register for his pro license and get that somehow within the next couple of weeks and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, fair play to him. Like, he has done a good job in the small amount of time that he's had. But I just feel like Ghent were looking for it last year, and Anderlecht are looking for it this year. They're looking for their Nicky Hyen, the kind of guy that they've just like promoted from within, and he'll go on and take them on. But they forget that Nicky had quite a bit of experience as a head coach, and had like worked with the academy and stuff, and then came back through. So, like, he'd had his ups and downs as a coach. He'd learned from some of these things. So yeah, I hope it works, because it'd be great to see like former player, Muscon legend, kind of going on to do things like that. But I'm so skeptical, and I feel like this was bound to happen, wasn't it, guys? Like, everyone knew this was going to happen, and I haven't seen Anderlecht fan reaction to this yet, so I'm interested if you guys have, to kind of feel free to bring that to the fore. But I'd be like, I'd get it, like, and if it was just he's just going to be there end of the season, it's definitely just the end of the season, and then we're going to find someone. But you just don't trust them to make that decision, because who's making the decisions anyway? And we've seen it as well. Like, Fink has already said that he kind of didn't want to come because it was just so confusing.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, Torsten Fink's been talking over the last sort of 24 hours or so, revealing a little bit more about why he turned down the Anderlecht job before going to Turkish football, of course, where he is now. Essentially, Torsten Fink was saying, look, Anderlecht are a top club, but the timing wasn't right. He wasn't feeling, Ben was talking about vibes there. Torsten Fink wasn't feeling any vibes about, at that time, and saying essentially there's no plan. And that kind of sums up exactly how I feel about Anderlecht. I mean, this decision and in some respects it's worse insofar as, Taravella to the end of the season is one thing, but I think the intention is for it to become a permanent appointment, such as it is, if they can sort out the administrative side of the coaching badges situation, which they needed to do, because if that doesn't happen by, I think, mid-April, then fines are going to kick in, and they're going to have to potentially look at, somebody else coming in there. But, Jeremy Taravella has gone from being initially Besnik Hazi's T3 to what looks like very much could be Anderlecht's kind of permanent T1 for a whole host of reasons. And one of those reasons is the fact that they simply couldn't agree a deal with anybody else. People always, have a laugh in footballing circles about coaches who get jobs and they go, oh, well, do you know what I mean? He was third or fourth choice, do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. How does he feel about that? You can't even say that in this case. I don't know how far down the list he actually is in terms of their options, or whether he was even really seriously on their list of options. It seems that the players are quite comfortable with him, and I think that's probably a factor as well. Ben was talking about the vibes thing. I think he's probably brought a degree of breathing space to the club, and a certain degree of kind of balance. in a very short period. And it is very short. I mean, 5 games? He's won 3 of them, drawn 2 of them. One of them, by the way, was the Cup semi-final, obviously, the night they went to the Boston, played very well and really, trod all over Antwerp to get to the final. But, if you're going to make a decision like this, these are big decisions. There's not a lot of evidence to go on. Okay, the players say collectively we're with him. That, I'm not sure how much that counts for, if I'm really honest. This is my feeling about these things. Players have their own self-interest a lot of the time, both individually and collectively. So it's always kind of difficult. Particularly when they say we're with the coach. It's very different if a collective says, no, we think he's lost the dressing room. That's a different thing. In that situation, there's kind of no going back. But I don't think this is really a positive for them. And it does underline the whole, Fink's point about there being no plan. I still feel like that. There's been a big change at management level at Anderlecht. We know that. Apart from Mark Cook, everybody else, has changed. Although it is some new faces, old faces, should we say, that have kind of come back into the club. But I just get this sense of there being no concrete plan. There is still no sporting director, and we're in a situation where it looks like Taravel's going to get the job on a permanent basis. On the basis of what? Do you know, it's just odd. And as Ben says, we've seen this on a number of occasions with other managers, recently in Belgian football as well, and it hasn't gone very well. This may work out very well for Anderlecht. Who knows? He might go win the cup, European football secured, and, everybody's feeling kind of, like they're winning again. That's probably what they're hoping will happen. It'll have a kind of bounce effect, And if he wins the cup final, he's going to be a hero. Do you know what I mean? This is a club that they haven't won anything in 8 years, So it's a tricky one. But my initial reaction, if I'm really honest, was I did laugh when I saw this news kind of breaking, because I just thought this kind of underlines everything that's wrong about, kind of decision making. I think sometimes I think they should be patient, take their time, get a sporting director first, of course. This is normally the way. We've talked about this before just a couple of weeks ago. Let the dust settle and then make a decision rather than rushing this. Because you may bring in a sporting director at the end of the day who doesn't get on very well with Taravel either. That's another thing you don't know. So it's just a mess. It just seems messy to me, and I'm just not into it. Some Anderlecht fans, Ben mentioned the fans, some of them reacted reasonably positively to this, some of them. I can kind of understand why. Because in the last few weeks there have been some improvements, but it's not a big tranche of data to base really important decisions on.
Yeah, no, and it's this old adage indeed. Win a few games after becoming caretaker manager, and you will get a job in football. Not only Belgian football. I want to make it take it a bit broader. That happens everywhere, and it's more often than not a mistake. But yeah, the main thing is indeed what Scott mentioned again. Agreeing a lot with Scott today so far. That's definitely.
There's time yet. This is only the first half of the episode.
Exactly, but definitely there will be some. Yeah, it really it underlines this chaos that is still going around the club and the priorities not being set straight. Of course, this could still be a continuation of just buying time until the end of the season. Still, also, who knows? And of course, then it's unfortunate that he doesn't have the right diplomas at the moment, but that's something minor, maybe to get out of the way in their eyes. But we also all know if he does reasonably well in those Champions playoffs, we will get the same story as they actually just had with Hazi, although he didn't even do reasonably well in those playoffs, of course. But okay, that's yet another story. But that's really, the hope might be indeed there that it will be a success, but all we definitely can say at the moment that would not be something that comes out of the structure, but more of a lucky break, which always can happen. But then they might have the moment, though, of course, to finally try to fix everything else a little bit better above there and do it the other way around than we used to, maybe. But maybe it is the way for them. But it's not a path that you should choose when you have choices, and that's also mainly the thing here. I guess they didn't really have many choices here left, I suppose, and we will see if it's only lasts until summer, which would probably be the smart decision, or if he does that well that they just can't deny him the job furthermore, and then okay, it still might be a good decision, but the chances are still slim, or the chances are that it will still work this season, and then it by the beginning of next season it appears not to have been the right choice. But that's wait and see once again. But I would say that it's not likely, given the past both at Anderlecht and inside the footballing world. It seems to be like a perpetual merry-go-round, maybe a bit, as well as when we're talking about managers, especially. I guess that's a good comparison, but. Let's see what it gives. They so far the vibes are a bit better at Anderlecht on the sporting levels in recent weeks, of course. But let's see if that will continue.
Yeah, it's such an interesting moment in football, isn't it? Where it's like you're getting all these 30-something guys being hired with that just almost off the out of their careers sort of thing, or after a couple of like not even assistant coaching gigs and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just weird. It's like one of those things. I always feel like it's good. I like seeing a manager who's worked their way up from kind of the lower leagues and got like a body of like Scott said, like the data's like larger. You kind of get it a little bit more, but it's so cutthroat now that you don't really get that chance to do that anymore. You can't really build that kind of career and that CV to the point where you can kind of move up through the leagues. And I was trying to think how many managers from like the second division have we seen get a job in the first division since we started the podcast. I can't think of many, if any.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting kind of point to make, I think, Ben. Something that I find intriguing in all of this is, I mentioned that, Taravel's gone from being Hazi's T3 to potentially the permanent T1. That, to me, to a certain extent, tells its own story. I mean, it's okay if Jeremy Taravel didn't have this urgent impetus to become a T1 anytime soon, particularly. But what that tells me is that Jeremy was quite happy being on the general coaching staff. And didn't, in the short term anyway, have any real intention of becoming a T1. Obviously, circumstances change, and in Belgian football, because of the football and climate and the ecosystem in Belgium, often coaches get opportunities thrust upon them, quite literally. It's common, and that can change the whole context of a situation. But to go from being a T3 to a T1, when you don't actually have the badges to kind of do it for any longer than quite a short temporary period is kind of quite something, I think, and it does tell its own story. And yeah, he's not even been at the club actually that long. Do you know what I mean? He's been close to Besnik Hazi and kind of part of his staff. So it's just, yeah, it's good seeing people getting given an opportunity, but give somebody an opportunity when there's kind of a basis to do that, I think. And this is another one of those examples where there just isn't enough of a basis to kind of really make that decision. And I think the flip side of that is, if this happens and it doesn't really go particularly well, which the likelihood is that's going to be the case in the long term, then it has the potential to kind of damage someone's reputation as well, which he's very well aware of. That's the risk you take when you step into these positions, of course. But yeah, it's just it's not something I can be that supportive of, because I don't dig these vibes.
One player that they need to hope does dig the vibes is Nathan the Cat. Obviously, his contract's up in summer 2027. He's only 17, but he's already such a key player for them on the pitch, and financially, he could be a really key player for them when he does eventually get sold. But you've now got these next couple of months to convince him that it's worth his time hanging about for a little bit longer. And yeah, Joris is shaking his head. Scott doesn't look too sure.
I don't see that happening. I would not be surprised if he actually get a World Cup call up. Even that's okay. Whether he features or not, we will have to see. There's a lot of at the moment. There's a lot of midfielders out as well. But anyway, in general, that would make it even more difficult to keep him. But the only option I see that he stays with Anderlecht is a loan back, or that like a real big club buys him. Looking at you, Bayern, maybe with the obvious links there as well, and then loan him out again to them for half a season or a season. But I do think that there's not a big chance that he will otherwise be staying at Anderlecht this season, because he's been just too good already at this stage. Whereas I don't think that only having 1 year of contract left is going to be such a big thing necessarily, but of course he could use it from his side, even though he has an obvious love for Anderlecht as well. So I don't think he would really pressure them for that. But and it might not. That 1 year left is only, of course, because of the rules and regulations around that. So since he's not 18 yet, he can't sign a full-fledged 5-year-old contract yet. But nonetheless, I don't see many scenarios where he will be staying at Anderlecht, except if he really, really, really pushes for it, which he might. But then on the other hand, it might be a necessity for them to sell at the sums that they probably will have to, the offers they probably will get. That's of course, If those offers don't come, which would be a surprise, then of course there could be an option to stay, and that he indeed. Well, it might not be the worst thing for him in a sportive level to stay and play one more full-fledged season. Maybe, probably with European football as well, but I'm at the moment I don't really see it, except if he really, really wants to stay himself, which to a certain extent he definitely does. But then there's still the option that they might want to have to push him out themselves, sadly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the thing is, like, it's really easy for me to say. I wrote about this as well this week. It's so easy for like me to sit here and be like, yeah, I should stay, when like I'm not faced with that decision financially and kind of stuff. But I think there's a couple of factors that he needs to take into account. One is like which of the big clubs are coming in for him. Look at who they've signed recently. Look at how they've developed them, and if these players are just perpetually on loan and never really getting anywhere with their careers, like avoid them like the plague, because there's so many teams out there that are just we've spoken about it in recent weeks. They hoard up all these young players, send them out on loan, and hope that one of them kind of hits the jackpot and comes back and plays for them. And it's just not, it hasn't really worked in that sense. And he's also only 17. Like, you could stay for 2 more years, leave Anderlecht having made over 100 appearances, done like loads of really great things, and you're still under 20. Like, you've still got your entire career ahead of you. So I just don't think there's that much for him. There shouldn't be that much of a rush to get into these other places. Like, why not just stay and play first team football as such a key player for the club that you love, even for just a couple more seasons? You're still going to be under 20. Like, you've still got so much time left in your career. I'll be shocked, compared to some of the other players that left, I'll be shocked if he doesn't go on to be something, because he already looks so good. He's also just like super physical as well, which is kind of scary for a player of that age. He's very imposing and stuff like that. So he's quite unique in terms of like a young player that's breaking in, because he's just already at the physicality level that you'd probably expect someone in their 20s to be. So this might just be me saying this, like wishful thinking and stuff, but I do hope he stays. I think you're right, Joris. I completely agree with you, but I'd love him to stay like maybe 2 more seasons, just to kind of enjoy playing first team football for that little bit longer, and then make the move. And by then he should hopefully be a better player from all the kind of the first team he's played, the European experience, international experience as well. And he's then can kind of look back and be like, I had a good time at Anderlecht. I had a good time at the club that I love for like a couple of seasons, and I've still got now the chance to go on and play in the big European leagues.
Yeah, it's for me, this is a slightly depressing conversation, because, you know, we have this at least once a season at least once a season, this conversation about a different player. I mean, yeah, he is only 17, which is kind of, insane when you think about it, really. The talent is real. I think it's worth underlining that. Sometimes players, particularly young players who've been identified as being hot, don't always justify that. There's little moments. I think this is someone who could, like a number of others, go all the way. But there's so many factors that play into this. And it's essentially too early to say. Obviously, there'll be lots of differing opinions being poured into both of Nathan de Cat's ears at the moment. I'm sure he'll be getting lots of advice by his management and his agent as well about what the smart thing to do is. This is a really painful one for Anderlecht, because this is a player who, obviously, if he was under any length of contract at the moment, would, from an Anderlecht perspective, they'd be going, yeah, this is a £30 million player. Do you know what I mean, in terms of his potential? But because of the contractual situation, you can't do that. So elite clubs are going to be licking their lips, I think, at the moment, looking at this. And that's kind of painful to watch a little bit from the outside, because, to be honest, it's just not right. You do see situations sometimes, obviously, where players in situations similar to this do agree to signing a contract extension because actually they go, do you know what? I know I'm going to leave, but I want to ensure that the club I'm at, that, has essentially made me who I am to this extent of my career, gets something back that can be invested back into the infrastructure and the system. And that's always a very good thing. I think if that was going to happen, we would have seen a strong indication probably of that before now, and sometimes circumstances work against you. I just hope that when those offers start to drop in, and they probably already have, then there's a clear plan. The last thing you want is for Nathan de Cat to go to a club where he's not going to play regularly, and develop, because the one thing he has at the moment is he's going to continue to develop, and if he stays at Anderlecht even just for another year, which like Joris, I think on balance isn't going to happen, he is a guaranteed starter. He's going to be able to play 40, potentially 50 games plus, with European football thrown in there if that happens, which again is going to be brilliant for his development. Playing twice a week, the extra travel, European football, different thing again. Something he's not really been able to experience in a way that he would want to. The plan's got to be right. So I hope he's saying, what's the plan, guys? Ben's advice there about, look at who these offers are coming from, look at how those clubs have developed similar young talent. How have they done? Because it's very easy to sell a talented, impressionable young player who is being fast-tracked to go to an elite club, any kind of project, really, and a player fall for it. We've seen more often than not talent not go to the next level because the plan hasn't been right. And I'm thinking about players who've left Belgium in recent years as well, who have not been forgotten. That would be too strong a word, but in terms of their talent and potential and the way that their career has been managed, you're like, okay, I'm not sure they're going to kind of go to the level they kind of could have got to. We don't know what Nathan de Cat's personality is like and what his own thoughts are on his own pathway. I did see a very interesting conversation today, actually, among some Belgian journalists that was talking specifically about de Cat and where the best destination might be for him in terms of his overall career trajectory. And there seemed to be a consensus that German football might be his best bet in the short term for a couple of years. That was based on the Kevin De Bruyne experience, which is fair enough, but I don't think they're like for like players in kind of some ways. It's a very interesting one because choices make or break you at this stage in your career. And the frustrating thing looking at this from the outside is real young talent often doesn't get to make the decision on their own anymore. There are so many factors that play into this, family, agents, and a whole host of other staff as well that all have their own competing interests in you going to a separate place. And I think ultimately Anderlecht are going to lose out, not just because they're losing, a top talent, but they're not going to get the financial recompense on any level that, they probably deserve, and that's painful. It's interesting because if you said to an Anderlecht fan, I think, would you rather win the cup and get European football and enjoy that moment, or would you rather make a lot of money off the back of selling Nathan de Cat? The second option is the more important to them as a club in the long term, and they're not going to get that. So it's a painful one, and the whole thing kind of smacks into that bigger narrative of Anderlecht not really having a grand plan as well.
I'm starting to disagree with Scott here.
I knew it would happen eventually.
Because I don't think that, I do think they still might get that massive offer. Also, but one thing I also feel like, what are we still talking about? He's obviously going to Chelsea and ending up in Strasbourg next season.
Exactly.
That's the pathway.
It'll be, exactly. Like that's where he'll end up. Or yeah, I was just kind of thinking of teams and stuff. Like, because I look at Arthur Vermeeren going to Atletico Madrid. It just didn't work. He's now on loan at Marseille from RB Leipzig. So like, it's like he's now on his like third team basically, and he's not found that kind of home and stuff. El Canus, slightly different, going to Leicester. Like that was just a terrible career move. But now he's gone to Stuttgart and he's playing a lot better and he's featuring a lot more. So I'm like, maybe De Cat should just go to Stuttgart. Like that seems to be, they've seemed to be getting some good young players in. Dennis Undav's obviously doing really well there. Like players from the Belgian league have gone there and done quite well. It's not like the top club, but it's like an ambitious club. It's got a great stadium. It's got a fantastic fan base. So that could be an option. Don't want him to go to RB Leipzig because I don't like RB Leipzig. Bayern's obviously an option because it's kind of compared to like a Chelsea or something like that. I feel like with Bayern, it's like it's in a weird way. He's more likely to actually play there because they kind of will be just like, no, you're good, you'll play. That we don't care that you're an 18, 17-year-old kid. That we'll just give you a go and you'll play. And like the link with company obviously is like massive. Like I think that really helped him. So like,
and there might be, I mean, Bayern often plays games competitively until minute 60, and then he might just get some extra minutes through that.
Exactly, he's going to get a half an hour against. I don't know who's getting promoted. He's going to get half an hour against Schalke, like twice a season at least. Like a couple of other teams as well. Like guaranteed. So I think Bayern's obviously massive club. It's a good move. Dortmund would have been one back in the day, but I have certain feelings about Dortmund as well. I blame them for Fortuna Düsseldorf relegation like 15 years ago, so I still have a sore spot about them, and I believe they've wasted lots of talent in the years. But anyway, we'll move on to Union against Genk, and let's talk a little bit about shithousery. Because it was in full effect today. I think it was kind of fitting though, wasn't it? It's Burgess's 250th game. He scores a goal, and then we have some shithousery. It's like it was like the perfect celebration of Christian Burgess in the Belgian Pro League, don't you think? But did it go a bit too far? Like, how do we feel about this blocking that they were doing? It just felt very anti-football. And I hate that kind of word. I hate this kind of thing. And there's a thing in basketball about like ethical hoops and how teams that look to just draw fouls and do that are playing unethical hoops. And this felt like unethical football in the sense of like the blocking and the shithousery and stuff like that. And I know that you two had a little bit of a disagreement about this in our chat. So I'm keen to try and stoke that fire a little bit again. But I feel like if you're going to deploy a Christian Burgess and a Mr. McAllister at the back, you're going to have to just accept that the shithousery is part of the game. And I think the way I feel about big Chris Burgess is he's one of those players that if you're neutral, you find him super entertaining because he's always playing on the edge. He's winding people up. And if he plays for you, you love him. He's like your favorite player. But if you have to play him twice a season, you absolutely despise him. You just couldn't stand him because he'd just be like getting on your nerves constantly. And then I feel it just makes me laugh because you got him, you got McAllister who plays on the edge. He's not as much of like a shit house, but he is like, he's just such an Argentinian defender, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? He's just like, he plays and you watch him play and you're like, yeah, that man's Argentinian. Like he could easily be playing rugby for Argentina as well. Like I feel like he could easily play both things. And then Ross Sykes just seems to be there, like he's just like an innocent bystander. That's how I feel about Ross Sykes compared to the other two. Like the other two are deep in the dark arts, and he's just kind of like vibing along next to them. But yeah, I didn't like seeing it, to be honest. I felt like it was just a bit annoying. And it is interesting, isn't it? I think over the course of this podcast, since we started, Union came up and they were like the exciting team, and everyone's like, oh, like, this is quite fun. And for lots of neutrals, they've stayed that way. But for lots of other teams in the Pro League, they've become just as despised as Club Brugge because of like kind of Christian Burgess, some other guys in that team as well. So it is really interesting to see how the kind of perception of Union has changed over that time, over that period. I'm staying neutral in this. Like, I still find it very entertaining, but that's because I am neutral and I don't have any skin in the game in that sense. But I can imagine if it's your team, it's so infuriating.
Yeah, I have to say, to be honest, I don't think Scott and I mean, we agreed to a certain extent anyway. Still, I don't think we're complete disagreement. But specifically about the shithousery, well, the most frustrating part of that, well, it's the referees can the punishment for that. There is an indirect free kick or even a penalty even when it's happening in the penalty box. So, but okay, so I mean, to it's mainly that indeed frustrated me about the game, because like, okay, Genk lost, but they deserve to lose. I'm fine with that. So even that's like, yeah, it was one of those again, but it is indeed something which you think in Union anyway lately as well. We think they know that as well. I think they do maybe put an extra effort in. They know they can derail them a bit more easily because of the style they're playing. We're remembering last season with Chambare and the ball on the pitch, for example, like. All things that are sadly not even needed to win those games cleanly, to be my opinions. So that's the saddest part of it all, maybe. But for this obstruction, I mainly blame the referees and maybe not only on these obstruction parts. Well, the saddest thing there specifically was that the DG Steinberg, in one of those occasions where he actually got pushed himself towards Union players, actually got a foul against him, so which did not make sense at all. But in general, yeah, the referees are going too much into this way, into the style of play of Union. The frustrating part is maybe also in the last few seasons, it's become more and more clear that this style of play, the more physical style of play, is very successful in Belgium and brings you far. And the referees will allow a lot of things. And I have a hate and love-hate relationship with that, because it also is something that benefits the Belgian sides in Europe as well, because it really is making them better. But yeah, that's really the love-hating I have. But I do still feel the referees are going a bit too much into that narrative. Yeah, the general narrative of Union coming up and the fairy tale story, and that now is turning slowly or not so slowly. I think that's just where it goes anyway, with any kind of narrative, like of a small club becoming a big club. I don't think they mind that themselves either, and that's also fair. So that's just the way the storytelling goes, I guess. Actually, in general, at first it's cute, but then you become an actual competitor for many sides, and then they don't like it anymore. Well, that side on its own, I mean, so be it, and that's just a praise for them in a weird way, I guess, as well. But just that shithousing element, and Burgess getting away. Like, another thing that is very frustrating is that he should not have been on the pitch anymore by the time these things happened as well. There was the obvious red cards that he didn't get in the end for the penalty as well. That's another, well, not even discussion maybe, because you would say double punishment is not possible anymore, but just the severeness of the foul and where his feet went are too high. So that would have warranted the red card anyway. And okay, but again, I don't really want to talk about that. That's too much. But in general, I feel like they do get talking about someone who said that before, which was Van den Broek when after they played against Union. I do feel like that's it's something that is not necessarily. I mean, it's not. I don't see there is necessarily say there like there is a bias before against Union, or maybe there is a small bias, but not that they can do much about it necessarily. But they're really looking for those borders, how far they go, and they're quite smart about it. But I also feel like the referees in general are going a bit too much with that, because obviously now Genk were at the receiving end, and now I was very infuriated about it, despite being, like I said, like the result was fair, 11, like everything. Genk was just too weak as well, but that regardless of that, I feel like they do get away with a lot of things also in this game, like where they. Like Birch is actually okay. I thought he had less, but he got his 9th red yellow card, so that's not little. But he could have gotten a lot more already, and also different colors across this season, also across recent seasons, of course. But yeah, like it feels like they're pushing it since the start, maybe a little bit, but they're pushing it further and further, and now it really has reached the level. So in that sense, that part of the narrative, I feel they're pushing it over the line, and where that stems from, or if that's indeed a continuation, that's more the disagreement I had with Scott at this. But like, I do think, okay, if it's not true, then please contradict me soon. But I do think he does agree with. But that the shithousery part did go, not necessarily with everything I said, but with that the shithousery part is going a bit too far. But it's more like, where does it come from? That is what he's asking about. Where I do feel like it's kind of, they've always been doing it, but it's because they are not getting punished, they are moving on with that, and that's. If that's indeed just always been the case or not, I think that's more like the discussion point with Scott that I've been having. But it's just frustrating to play against them, which to a certain extent is good for them, of course, but to a certain extent they seem to be close to crossing the border, or maybe already have crossed that border where it becomes too much, actually, and that indeed there should be some more disciplinary actions maybe on the field. And I don't blame them for that, but more like the referees maybe being a bit lax on them sometimes. Okay, there were many words for not a complete rant even, but and that's just a few points. But I mean, it was frustrating to watch, and I was during the game I was actually quite okay with most things that happened, even though some cards not given maybe, and on the other side, and for the reaction a minute later it was given, that some niggly fouls and more than niggly fouls that they do get away with, but that happens. But it just happens it's the general feeling, once again, like last week, I guess. Also, the general feeling is a bit, I guess, that it happens too often with them, and that it's not even like them being close to the line or knowing where to draw the line, but just plain not refusing to give the cards sometimes when they're warranted. Okay, once again, I get 1 minute extra without saying much more, so I'll leave the mic now.
I think it's perhaps just as well we didn't have this conversation in the immediate aftermath of the weekend. Joris has a chance to kind of process his thoughts and get some context on all of this, which is useful for the conversation. It is a very interesting conversation, this one, because for me anyway, this is really about to what extent has Union's kind of playing style evolved over the last few seasons. I do take the point that there is an argument that the kind of shithousery and some of those really pushing the boundaries with some of the physical behaviour from a tactical perspective and how they deal with certain opposition players and situations has increased. I don't know if that's actually the case. Is that a perception? It's difficult to know. I don't really know the answer to that, to be honest. I do think what has happened, though, with Union is I think they have gradually become more physical over the last 3 or 4 years. I think that is a deliberate thing. I don't, and I mean that generally. I don't mean in terms of the pushing the boundaries with, you know, what Ben would describe perhaps as anti-football and some cynical behaviour, you know, that nobody really likes to see at times. And I think Joris's point about, you know, it is the role of referees to actually set the tone for a game. And I think if certain behaviour is allowed to become normalised and players do learn, do you know what, we're actually getting away with this, we don't have to account for this, then yes, the danger is that, you know, that behaviour spreads a little bit. And this is where the conversation rests for me. Is that actually what's going on here? Are we seeing a side that, you know, have employed certain tactics at a certain point, and you know, learned that basically they've got away with it, that there's no recourse for these things? This comes all the way back to Burgess, I think, as well, in that, you know, non-Union fans would look at Christian Burgess and have a healthy disdain for him because, you know, they are on the receiving end of a lot of what, you know, they would argue would be Burgess red cards. I mean, there is an argument to say that, you know, he should have probably had 3 or 4 recently, and yeah, you could argue about that all day, and I think most of them probably were reds, to be honest. You know, he does tread a fine line there. It's kind of, this is where I disagree with Joris slightly on the Burgess point specifically. For me, he's a difficult player to dislike. Partly because I don't have any skin in the game in lots of respects. I might change my opinion if I'm on the receiving end on a Union Mechelen game or something like that. But he's just difficult to dislike because he's so committed to the cause. And I think some of his, and I'm going to defend him just slightly here, I don't think all of his decision making is deliberately black arts negative, because I don't really think that's always who Christian Burgess is. I think there are times when he pushes the envelope because he knows he has to, because he's literally the last line of defence sometimes. But I don't think that's really who he is. I think sometimes when you get away with things, yes, you're more inclined to go down a certain road again. But I don't think he's fundamentally a cynical or a dirty player. I know there are other fans of other Belgian teams who...
I'm going to intervene. I'm not buying that. I'm tired of hearing that argument. He might be the nicest guy off the pitch. I might even agree with you. But on the pitch, I do think he actually is.
Yeah. I think, you know, that's what I mean about this being so interesting, because I think, see, when you cross the white line, it becomes a different thing. You know, I've never forgot Nicky Hines saying to me in conversation that all that matters is what happens when you cross the white line. All of the noise around whether Christian Burgess is or isn't at times a cynical or dirty player is kind of irrelevant. All that matters is what happens on the pitch. And I think, you know, as their playing styles evolved and they have become more physical, which I think is probably a good thing, because what they've learned through successive disappointments in nearly winning titles, going so close, is that actually what you have to get better at, those small margins, and they've been right to do this. Those small margins that have won them a title have been those things that have allowed them to compete better physically in duels and make the right choices in transitions. Those two key things which you're going to have to do really well if you're going to get anywhere in Belgian football, never mind win the title. Having a good season is important, you know, being good at those things. This is probably the most interesting conversation I think we've had in ages in lots of respects, because, you know, depending on your persuasion, you're going to, you know, either agree or disagree with us. I did find it very funny that some people have been referring to Union now as Atletico Brussels. That did make me laugh a lot. You know, football fans of a certain age won't need this explained to them. Younger fans might need this explained to them. But that did make me laugh, because I thought it was kind of perfect description. It's going to be really interesting to see how Union approach the playoffs, because we know what you have to do to win titles in Belgium, and they knocked it out of the park last year by being the best side ever to kind of do that. So they've set a bar for this. I just think we don't see it all the time from them. It's not, you know, it may reappear in certain matches, but I'm a little bit more relaxed about it, because, you know, we don't see it every week. I think you need to do what you need to do sometimes. You need to be pragmatic about it. And I think some of this is about laying down a marker as well, because we only tend to see it when they're playing sides who they consider to be legitimate challengers. The funny thing for me is Genk last weekend weren't really in that position. You know, Genk really aren't a legitimate challenger to Union this season, at least, which was what made the context of this a little bit different in a way. And it's worth underlining that as well.
That was very interesting to just sit and listen to. I mean, yeah, I've really got nothing to add on top of what I've already said. I think, yeah, it is one of those things where like you either hate it or you love it, and yeah, like, you actually kind of alluded to it as well. It's kind of like the corner thing with Arsenal and all that. It's that one of those things that just it will constantly get brought up, but it is funny what you say about you can't really take someone's personality off the pitch and kind of give them an excuse for what they do on the pitch. You know what I mean? It's just like anyone could say like, oh, they're the nicest guy. But there's that guy in the NBA who plays for the Detroit Pistons, I think it is. His nickname's Beef Stew. Look him up if you can see anything that he does. The man's always in fights, but they're always like, yeah, he's just the nicest guy. It's like, why is he always fighting? Like, you can't tell me. It's like if someone tried to tell me Kevin Muscat's a really nice guy, I'd be like, no, I'm pretty sure Kevin Muscat is not a nice man. Like, I've seen his body of work. I've seen what he's done to people on a football pitch. I'm not buying that he's not done. Yeah, not the loveliest guy ever. Anyway, there's currently at the moment some CPL action going on. So it does feel a little bit weird to talk about it right now with everything that is happening. But Scott, do you want to give us at least a little rundown of the results from the weekend? And I guess by the time we finish recording and we've got this out and people are listening, we might already know who's won the title, even though we kind of already do.
Yeah, well, this past weekend we've had match day 28, which saw Beerschot beat Young Gent 1-0, Eupen beat Young Gent 4-0, Liers beat Club Next 2-1 in the 120th anniversary fixture. These 120th anniversary celebrations feel like they've been going on for weeks, actually. Well, they kind of have. It's been a kind of 2-week celebration with lots of nice things going on down Liers way. Anderlecht Futures drew 0-0 with Patro Eisden. Olympic Charleroi lost to Molenbeek. Lommel and Kortrijk finished one apiece. Lokeren lost the Vaasland derby to Beveren, who by this time tomorrow night could more or less be champions. And
they got their first penalty in that game as well.
Yep, that's right. Yep. And Serang beat Frank Baran by 4-0 So, yep, it's all eyes on Beveren tomorrow night. Can they secure the title?
I would presume so.
I'll be shocked if they don't. Yeah, it would just be wild, wouldn't it? Big win for Serang down at the bottom as well. That is quite an important win for them. There's been some. I
have a theory about that really doesn't matter at all. But let's see. I know we're going to talk about it this week, but we will leave that conversation for next week, and that's just fine actually for any argument I can make. But stay tuned if you're into that.
Yeah, if you're interested in the relegation battle or battle in inverted commas in the CPL, we'll have a little bit more about that next week. So far tonight, Merville Bacardi scored a hilarious own goal. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. I saw that pop up while we were recording. And Alexis Andre Jr., any Maidstone United fans out there will remember his name. I think he's making his first start for RFC Liège tonight, and he saved a penalty. So congratulations to him. It's a bloody good penalty save as well. So that George Elokobi, one of the absolute legend of English lower league football, called him the best goalkeeper ever in the National League South a couple of years, like last season. So, yeah, good to see someone from English football getting a little bit of game time and making himself known to the RFC Liège faithful. Good chat this evening. Hopefully everyone has enjoyed it. If you've got your opinions on, anything that we've mentioned, feel free to drop us comments. I know you can do that on Spotify and presume you can do it on Apple as well. I haven't really checked, but you know where to reach us on social media as well if you want to get in touch. We might even do some questions at some point. We haven't done that for a while, so maybe we'll open up for some questions. Let's do that next week. If you got any questions for the podcast, feel free to send them over, especially with the kind of regular season running down. Feels like the right time to do it, so we'll put out a post for that as well. Guys, anything else to add from either of you before we head off?
I just hope everybody has a tip-top week, troops.
Nothing to add to that.
Perfect. If you haven't already, leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. You can donate to us as well at Buy Me a Coffee. Link to that will be in the show notes. Link to Scott's Substack will also be in the show notes again. I actually remembered to do it last time, so I'll keep remembering to do it, which is good on me. But anyway, as always, thank you very much for listening to this episode, and we'll see you very soon. Next week for another edition of the Belgian Football Podcast.